Now, the headline on the front page of the Daily Nation reads, just one of the headlines, Ruto, the isolated man in push for referendum. Deputy President William Ruto yesterday became even more isolated in his stand against a referendum after opposition leaders Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula changed tune and joined the clamor for change. Wow. This issue about the referendum, of course, coming from the handshake, now we're talking about the possibility of a referendum. Deputy President William Ruto has come out clearly and said we should not go that way. He is the only one who's actually come out and stood and said no to this kind of push. Now we're seeing that he's, according to the description here, an isolated man. If at all, he's previously been on the no campaign, previously when we had such a push for changing the constitution. It has the potential of actually helping him galvanize a following behind the no campaign. Remember, he's also running for president. It may look risky for him right now, but politically, this could actually work out for the deputy president, don't you think, Bonamanzo?
Yes, first of all, I want to confirm that the Wiper party leader, the Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, is also for the referendum. Because we need to look at the Bomas draft and what happened in Naivasha. And that's why you find the Honorable Mudavadi and the Honorable Senator Wetangula for change. And we've been saying that we know the same constitution the Deputy President William Ruto opposed as claiming that it has some problems. The 20%, which we all agree, now needs to be polished so that we have a constitution we can hold the country together. But while the DP is playing that sort of politics, I would like him to remember that you know, President Moi was the head of government for 24 years and came from his region. So there has to be a balance. We need a constitution whereby power is not concentrated in two regions only, but that every Kenyan has an opportunity. And because I know he's a Christian, I want to remind him that when King Saul was first chosen, he came from the smallest tribe and of the house of Benjamin and thought they were not going to be of much sense. And if you look at the history of leaders, even biblically, it is the most unlikely people who God finds favor in. So while we work on this very important thing on amendments of the Constitution, it has to be for the common good of Kenyans. It is clear now the pure presidential system can no longer work in this country, but he wants it for himself so that he can have all the power he could have without sharing it with anybody. And the future of Kenya is you must share.
Yes, but without even looking at the merits or demerits of this argument about whether or not we should change parts of the constitution, just for him politically appearing to be on this side, because yes, for a person with such huge ambitions, you might just get lost in the crowd. If we're all saying yes, then Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, your party leader, Kalonzo Musyoka, then all the credit goes probably to the main man. Probably Raila Odinga was pushing for this, and all the other gentlemen get lost in it. The deputy president does not want to get lost in the crowd. Probably that's why he says no, so that he stands alone on this other side. Don't you think that strategically, as a politician, that's the correct move, whether or not the merits or demerits of it don't come into play?
And I think that's wherein there is the challenge. Because I really do believe that given the headline and what we've been talking about today, I think we must get to the point where we begin to look at what it is that was the promise of that 2010 Constitution. The idea of the Constitution and the reason why Kenya has been lauded all over the world was that it was a Constitution that was intended to provide a good framework for good governance. We are aware that Chapter 6 of integrity exists, but we see that it still keeps to be elusive. We are aware that we have fantastic institutions, the IEBC, we have all these other instruments that are supposed to help us to serve the wananchi. It's not working. We are aware that we have struggled and we have come up with NYS, we have got programs and promises for young people. It's not working. We are aware that we said we were not going to leave anybody out, we were going to have equalization funds. It's not working. We are aware that we said that we were going to make sure that there was not going to to be discrimination on age, on grounds of gender, it's not working, the 2/3 gender rule. So I think I'd like to come back and really just remind Kenyans that what we are talking about now, it's not about politics. It's not about doing things right. Kenyans are used to the situation where you just come and do things right. You call NYS people, they talk, and then you leave it. We are talking about doing the right thing. And I think that it is extremely important that as Kenyans look at this conversation of the referendum, they need to think of themselves and think of their children 50 years from now. And they need to ask themselves, how can we provide a framework that would not only ensure that we have national ethos, we get back the pride that we had of being Kenyan, that we can be those who would be willing to work in the public service, because you know when you go there, you're not going to be a pawn at the hand of some politician, and that we can indeed begin to implement the good policies. So I would urge that what we need to do is to precisely look at those who seem to be positioning themselves for political gain as individuals to grab power, but to ask, how do we get authority and how do we get a structure that will give those who are in leadership opportunity to serve Kenyans?
The president, curiously, has remained mum on this debate up until now. Do you think he supports any proposal to change the constitution?
One thing I'm clear in my mind is that the president wants to leave a united Kenya. And the president is aware that with the current status of the constitution, there is a possibility that it may not hold the country together. And therefore, his intention is to, while listening to the proposal of Kenyans, to have a constitution which unites Kenya and makes it stronger, and makes Kenya great again. And therefore, in that spirit, you have no choice but to amend the constitution, to go back to Boma's draft, which many Kenyans had agreed upon, such that Kenyans are not shortchanged anymore. What happened in Naivasha to end up with the current structure was shortchanging Kenyans, and that has cost a lot of lives. We want the president of the country in future, or whoever is the head of government, be able to hold the country together. And it may work for DP Ruto or may work against him. If I were him, I would support a system whereby Kenyans, whoever is in leadership of the country, serves the country. The purpose of leaders is to serve. It's not to be bosses. And it's not just to control. You have to have the permission of Kenyans so that you can be able to serve them.
Yes.
And there's no greater leader than the one who serves with humility. And I want to say that has been shown recently. I went on this program previously and criticized the president for having, made remarks which were not very good to the judiciary. And recently when he came to Parliament, while he made his speech, and the Chief Justice was there, he tendered an apology. That is humility. And that's the sort of leadership we are looking for in the future. People with humility, people who are able to recognize the mistake and say sorry, but not just thumping leadership. And that's what the new constitution we want. The changes we want in the constitution, the referendum, we are looking forward to.
But Prof, there's a sense in which we tend to feel that our leaders have let Kenyans down in the kind of debate we are having, because it's not even about the issues. Very few Kenyans understand what issues lie behind this push for referendum. What exactly are we looking to change? It is about who supports the referendum or who doesn't. Now we know Raila supports a change to the constitution. Whether or not we understand what exactly is being changed, whoever supports Raila will support a change to the constitution. Whoever is supporting Ruto, whether or not we understand why he does not support these changes, will be on his side. Don't you think that leaders should be a bit, and when I talk about leaders, I talk even about members of the National Assembly like yourselves, that we should be more responsible and now try and educate the Kenyans about what exactly we're talking about, what is this that we feel should be changed, because very few Kenyans, you must agree, understand what exactly we're looking to change.
Yes, I'm in total agreement, Fred. I think what we really have to do is to get Kenyans to know exactly what it is that the very elaborate consultation that led to the Boma's draft was about, and what they themselves, based on their own experience, had recommended that they would need. And it is also important that we get Kenyans to understand that what happened at Naivasha was precisely what we now could be seeing as you know, a resistance, that there were those who then immediately began to see individuals and began to see how it is that you could either block some individuals or make it possible for other individuals to come in. I do believe that we would like that as we talk about the referendum, we get it away from power and individuals in the power structure and get back to what it is that the Constitution provides, a framework from which we then begin to organize and ensure that we have good governance and we deliver services to Kenya. And if it were possible, it would be nice to get a conversation that would highlight when we're looking at bombers and when looking at ways in which service delivery and a way of getting the individuals and institutions to be functional and effective, to look at the very specific areas in which the draft, as it was taken to Naivasha, to let Kenyans see what it is that happened.
Yes.
And what indeed politics, because at that level it was really the politicians that were there, what indeed politics cost us, and then bring Kenyans, because they still are very fresh on their minds, bring them to our elections in 2017 and let them look at the helplessness that was with IEBC, that was intended to be an independent body, and let them look at what happened to their own populace, whether it was the Kenyans who lost their lives or the Kenyans businessmen and women who couldn't get their work done, and then let them come to the point where they, as Kenyans, by this referendum, would be in a position to determine the framework. I really do believe that we need to take, through their own understanding, take that conversation from this power discussion of 2022 and bring it to Kenyans.
Do you feel that this is a very interesting question, because, okay, fine, even the media has a role to play. Do you feel the media is also doing a disservice to the nation, talking too much about the individuals who are opposed or who are for the changes to the Constitution and not necessarily talking about what are the issues?
You know, the media reports facts. And it is a fact that the Deputy President is opposed to you know, amendments of the structure of the executive. And you see, the moment he takes that position, we want to see how many Kenyans are with him. Because the Constitution belongs to Kenyans, the executive belongs to Kenyans. And therefore, that calls for a vote by the people to know whether his ideas are popular or whether they are not. And at that particular moment is when Kenyans decide. Last time when he lost in the referendum, he supported the Constitution and said, I've lost, but now I support. So I believe once he loses again, because you can see where more Kenyans are, as a matter of fact, and if there's a referendum, he will still come back and say, look, Kenyans have decided, I have no choice.
Do you think if he loses in this battle, he'll probably end up losing the other bigger one in 2022?
Obviously so. The moment although politics change in every minute, every hour, and I believe a wise man also changes his mind.
Yes.
I also agree with him to a certain extent. We cannot all agree just for the sake of agreeing.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying, despite the handshake, there must still be opposition in Parliament. We cannot just oppose for the sake of opposing, or just support for the sake of supporting. There must be good reasoning. We must check the government. And I'm saying, since he has good reasons why the Constitution should not be changed, he must tell that to Kenyans, and Kenyans who support his ideas will support him. But definitely, many Kenyans are for change, and they want us to go back to the Bombers draft.
Yes, Professor, on this issue of media, do you think that, just as I've criticized the leadership, that even the media probably is doing a disservice by not highlighting the main issues, just talking about the individuals?
Yes, I think I would like to humbly submit that the media needs to remember that its role is not just to inform, but to educate. And I think that given the challenges that we have with this presidential system and the manner in which there is a hybrid that does not really allow institutions to function effectively, but also a situation where Kenya is perpetually on a campaign and political mode and therefore not really getting to do better service. I actually do believe that it would be extremely important for the media to not only report facts as they are presented by individuals, but to take the role of analyzing and then presenting this information so that Kenyans begin to make choices which are informed. You know, Fred, when you give someone options and you would like them to be able to make a decision that they can feel is best for their goals, then you don't just present them with the politics and you know, I do agree very much with my colleague Mheshimiwa, but I think that the media needs to get Kenyans off this culture where what you need to do is to just get the microphone, and if you can galvanize the crowd and they can clap for you, then your case wins. I think there needs to be room to begin to ask, fine, when you have that charged atmosphere in a campaign rally or in a group or at a funeral, later on when we get back to reflect and think of our children and think of those that we have seen suffer day in, day out at the time that we talk about elections, and then ask, so what does this referendum opportunity present? Forget who it is who is going to be. And I just want to say, as I wind up, that I remember that there was a sense in which, and I keep remembering in 2002, when Kenyans had got to the point where it looked like there was a promise, irrespective of who it is who became in charge, the chief, you know, as the president. And the whole idea working towards the constitution was intended to bring inclusivity, but also allow separation of power so that there would be accountability. My understanding is that we need to get Kenyans to know the challenges that exist with the presidential system. We need to get Kenyans to know why NYS can continue to be, you know, using this sort of money, not accounting properly, and yet the money still keeps going there. It has to do with this presidential system. We need to know why parliamentarians, who even before the handshake were not necessarily exercising their voice and was somehow, you know, sort of dilly-dallying with the executive. Why was that happening? That was way before the handshake. I think it is important that even the whole idea of the handshake be discussed much more clearly so that we do not cloud everything and avoid responsibility. And the media, in my honest view, is the one that can play that role.
Wow. So now that you're the Monday panel, last year as we wrap up to actually predict or actually advise on what we should be seeing, what kind of conversations we should be seeing on the front pages this week, issues of NYS, matters to do with referendum. Should we give it a break? Should we have more politics? Should we have issues to do with education? As you give your final comment, start with you, Bernard.
Yeah, I think the media and the newspaper headlines is more of enlightening Kenyans and educating them, and also you know, we must showcase the plight of Kenyans. The truth of the matter is the country is going through a very difficult moment with the floods, and a lot of lives have been lost. Some carelessly, some matters which would have been prevented, and somebody responsible in a particular department of government being keen enough. And looking at the future, you have seen photographs of children struggling to go to school through mud, through water, you know, blocked sewerage systems and overflowing rivers and the dams which have given way. So all this information has come to us, and even the Kaini Dam, which has no water for Nairobi, all this information has come to us from the media, and it is very useful, you know, for planning of the future. The issue of the road accidents and the failed NTSA, you know, it's the work of journalists, and which helps the decision makers make decisions in the right way, because the information has been relayed to the executive and to the government and to the people. And therefore, information is very important. Information is power. But what is most important is to look forward into headlines which unite Kenyans more. As much as newspapers and want to make money, it's if we have, you know, while telling the truth, we need to unite Kenyans more and to have a common purpose, and most important, to fight corruption.
Okay, thank you, Dan Manzo. Finally, Prof.
Yes, as I wind up, I just want to continue to urge the media, because they have played a very key role in just exposing and letting Kenyans know what was the key issue, but to begin to balance and bring a lot more light on implementation. I think all of these issues that we see with the dam and NYS and so many other issues are because Kenya has very great policies, but not so much room to implement. And it would be useful to bring an exposure that sort of keeps politics out of the public service. I worked in the ministry as a secretary for children and as a permanent secretary, and I do know that if we were to begin to create an atmosphere where we are able to build a culture that would allow implementation to be supported a lot more, then we are going to be in a position to put away corruption and indeed to begin to realize the inclusiveness that we are looking for.